design something like that.
So my name's BJ Bender, and today I'm going to talk to you about 3 places that you may not think have anything in common at all. These places are Wyoming, and you can see this is the familiar Wyoming to all of us, India, which is in the center, and Patagonia, or southern Chile, on your right. So I'm originally from Orange County, California. A lot of people don't believe me when I say that because I've been here for 4 years and I fit in pretty well. I loaded my horses in the trailer and left for college as soon as I could. So I just graduated in May, as Jean introduced, with a major in rangeland ecology and watershed management, as well as environment and natural resources. And Jean mentioned that I would be talking about sustainability. I'm sure all of you have heard this word used. I really took an interest in sustainability my freshman year in college because the term was being used often in my classes, and I wanted to know what people actually meant by this word. So, in simple terms, what do people tell you to do when you don't know what a word means when you're, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old? Look it up in a dictionary. So I tried to look it up. And the main definition that I got was pretty broad. It basically describes sustainability as making something last a really long time. And I thought this wasn't sufficient in the context that people were using it in my classes. So I wanted to know what sustainability meant in a natural resource context. So overall, through my project, I found that sustainability included scalability, collaboration, science, and stakeholder priorities, and adaptive management is really the key tool we have to achieve this. So I'm going to go into detail about how I found these things out. Oh, there we go. So when I started on this investigation of sustainability, my personal goals were to understand the local and global challenges of sustainability. I didn't want to understand sustainability only in Wyoming or only in the US. I wanted it in different countries as well. As you can see from this picture and probably from my intense sunburn right now, I like to get my knees in the grass and my hands in the dirt. I love being outside. I love seeing how things work. I wanted to apply the things I had learned in school so I could see how they were actually effective. And I wanted to gain a global perspective on not just solutions, but creative solutions. So the 2 main stepping stones I used to gain a better understanding of sustainability were 2 study abroad trips that I took at the University of Wyoming. The most recent, I went to Patagonia, or southern Chile, which is part of Patagonia, this past winter for 2 weeks. And then I went to India 2 winters ago for 3 weeks. I want to start off with my India trip, just because that's the first one I went on, and that's the one I really received a lot of passion and inspiration from. I went to southern India with Dr. Sarah Strauss of the Anthropology Department at the University of Wyoming, and I've outlined the area in red right here that we were staying in most of the time. I wanted to give you a short background on the energy situation in India because it's quite interesting, and that's what I'm focusing on here. Their population is close to 1.3 billion people. That's the 2nd largest population in the world for a country. 65% of the energy that 1.3 billion people use is from non-renewable resources. And 400 million of that 1.3 billion have no access to electricity whatsoever. No electricity. So if you look at the whole world and think about all the people that have 0 electricity, 40%, almost half of those people are in India alone. Keep in mind that the Wyoming population is only 584,000 people. So we talked to many individuals when we were in southern India. My favorite was named Tuan. He was the sustainable energy specialist in a sustainable community called Oroville in India. I really loved the way that he looked at energy in India. It really inspired my whole investigation of sustainability. He said, India does not have an energy crisis. We have an energy storage crisis. He truly believed that the greatest source of energy we have is above our heads every day, the sun. It's just a matter of harvesting and storing that energy. And I really love the way he thought about that problem as a challenge, not a problem. So I chose to investigate a specific sustainable energy called biogas. And basically it's a system where you take an enclosed container, in this case a very large enclosed container, you can see the size relative to this woman, and you put organic waste inside this container, which is filled with, most of the way, with liquid. It's allowed to ferment and produces mainly methane gas in this process. And then you see this tube going out of the picture. That tube is used to transport the gas into a kitchen, in this case, which is used to power a cooking stove. So it's a closed loop system for feeding yourself and then using your waste over again. When I first heard about this system, I was like, wow, in the US we have tons of organic waste. Why can't we use this in the US? Well, we have a certain version of that currently. It's called cow power, and that's what this funny looking logo over here with the cow is representing. So basically, cow power is in Vermont. Several dairy farmers have banded together, and you can see there's a picture of a large-scale dairy farm right here. They collect their organic waste from raising dairy cows, and they put it into very large-scale biogas digesters. And the methane that is produced goes back to power the grid in Vermont. So that it's a much larger scale project, but it's very successful. So I couldn't help but think, what if we switched these scales? What if we were able to use the large-scale biogas systems to reduce that insane dependence on non-renewable resources in India? Or if we used it to provide that 40% of people with electricity off of waste? And what if we used that small-scale version of biogas that I was able to see in India and Wyoming for people who live off the grid, for small businesses, for restaurants? We could do some incredible things. So I'm going to change gears here and go to my next study abroad trip, where I went to southern Chile with Dr. Indy Burke and Dr. Bill Lonroth of the Hobbs School of Environment and Natural Resources. So again, I wanted to give you a short background on the economic situation in this case. I again outlined the area in red where we focused most of our time. That archipelago, it looks kind of like an island, but that hanging island there is called Tierra del Fuego, and that's where we spent most of our time. So overall, Chile exports almost all of their lamb, meat, and wool to China. This area is really not used for anything except for sheep grazing and tourism. Chile's wool exports total about 15 million US dollars per year. There are up-and-coming threats to this sheep production, including climate change and rangeland degradation. And the ranchers in the area have come up with their own solution to the problem, which is called holistic grazing. And holistic grazing has come to mean a lot of things, but what I'm really talking about in this presentation is taking your allotted grazing land, cutting it up into small pieces, condensing your herd, and moving it through those small pieces at an accelerated rate. So high-intensity, short-duration grazing. So I have personal experience grazing in Wyoming. I worked on the South Fork in Cody, Wyoming, grazing cattle. I think that's a dorky selfie that I took. And I'm also working on Highway 11 here for Ed and Harmony Siegel. I don't know if any of you know them, but they're really awesome people. And they do a version of this high-intensity, short-duration grazing. So I'm learning more as we speak. But I was able to compare my experiences grazing cattle in Wyoming to what I was able to observe grazing sheep in Patagonia. And we had the opportunity to work side by side with these ranchers, and it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. But there were some great similarities and some distinct differences. I want to talk about the similarity between these two places, because they seem like they're totally different, but they're actually in a similar latitude relative to their hemisphere. So they're a similar distance from the equator. That means they have a similar precipitation pattern, they have a similar weather regime, temperature regime. If I were to ask you which of these photos are from Wyoming and which of them are from Patagonia, would you be able to tell me? I'll give you a hint. My dog is in the ones that are in Wyoming. I tried to bring her on the plane, but they wouldn't let me. She really would have loved to chase those sheep. But these three up here are Wyoming. That's a white-tailed deer right there. And then this is a guanaco. We don't have those here. So obviously these three are Patagonia. Now this bottom one really shows you the similarity. Even their dominant shrub looks just like our dominant shrub of sagebrush. So they're both very similar places. So over my experience grazing in Wyoming and observing the grazing in Patagonia, I've really come to know that holistic grazing is an art. You have to be able to make decisions on the ground. rapidly. It's a science. You have to understand the digestive tracts that you're working with, the different animals and their interactions with the different types of forage that you're working with, but it's also a controversy, and I'll tell you why. Have any of you heard of cheatgrass before? Yeah. It's a prominent invasive grass in the western United States right now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, this one up here in your left-hand corner. And it's really good at avoiding grazing because it comes up before anything else does. And it dries out before anything else does. And then it really, really loves fire. So it'll catch on fire and then light up the hillside before anything else really has a chance to grow. So it's really good at messing up the native vegetation. There's a similar plant in Patagonia called mouse ear hawkweed. This yellow flower looks a little bit like a dandelion. It's very similar. It grows very low to the ground. It's really good at avoiding grazing, and because of that, it can just take over because it has no competitive pressure. So ranchers are struggling with this plant today, and some scientists are really concerned that holistic grazing method, condensing your herd into a small area, increases opportunities for this plant to move in and take over. So how convenient is that? These ranchers are trying to come up with solutions, but those very solutions could be threats. So after doing so much research and conducting this project, I really think that scientific studies could be used to guide these ranchers' decisions. But those ranchers need to be involved in those scientific studies from the start. So my favorite person that I talked to in Patagonia was named Roddy. He was the owner and operator of the Nevada Sheep Ranch, and we spent most of our time at this ranch. He said, whatever method you use, if you're out on the land, putting in the work, and seeing the changes happen, you can make your operation successful. And this is an extremely important aspect of sustainability because as scientists, we want to find a solution, implement it, and then walk away. And we can't do that. We can use ranchers to help us keep these solutions on the land for a long time. So when I got home, I did some research of my own. I looked at over 35 different scientific papers to figure out what the rangeland community defines sustainability as. And these are the things that they agreed on. Sustainability is a moving target. It's multidisciplinary. It's an abstract concept, but it can still be gauged by concrete scientific methods. And this is a soil pit we dug in Patagonia. That would be an example of a concrete scientific method. And it's an idea cluster. So it's so complex, you can't consider it one single idea. It's a group of ideas. So what else did I learn from these study abroad opportunities that could contribute to this scientific definition of sustainability? Well, you need to implement collaboration, and there's opportunities to fit creativity in there. Solutions need to be practical and adaptable, and stakeholder priorities can really be used to guide the whole process of finding sustainable practices. So how do we achieve complete sustainability? I talked about adaptive management briefly earlier. And I think it's really the key tool we have. If you look at this cycle, it's really similar to the scientific method, except for this one piece right here, that adjust bubble. So we do the whole scientific method, and then we figure out what did we do right, what did we do wrong, let's try it again. And that's what makes this very useful for ranchers, because they don't just do their ranch once, they do it every year. So why should we care about sustainability? You're all here. I hope you care about sustainability because you're sitting through my presentation. You haven't walked out the door yet. But I pulled my favorite quotes from those 35 plus scientific papers. And Lee, in 1993, said that sustainability sets a standard for human responsibility. That responsibility is sensible resource management. People forget that natural resource problems are actually human problems because we called them problems in the first place in our human-based society. So we do have that responsibility of sensible resource management. So overall, I learned that sustainability needs a collaborative definition and complex management. Scalability is key. Science must be conducted with stakeholder priorities guiding them. And adaptive management is the best tool we have to achieve all of this. So what's next? I graduated. That's the golden question. Yeah, thank you very much. But currently I'm working at the Hecht Creek Ranch on Highway 11, as I said before. And then I just got an interview yesterday, so I'll be interviewing with a private consulting firm for reclamation in Gillette. So I'm hoping to get a natural resource job with an agency such as one of these. I wanted to say a special thank you to all of the scholarship opportunities that I was able to take advantage of. I couldn't have done any of this without the funding that I received. And I also wanted to thank certain individuals. 2 of them are sitting in the room with us right now. I couldn't have done any of this without their help, and I used this project as my honors thesis, and I was able to complete my honors thesis. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you guys for coming here and for listening to all of our talks. So thank you very much for your time.